Very warm, a very warm good morning, dear students. Students, we were just dealing with the chapter. What do you say after citizenship, fundamental rights and duties? And I think we were answer the following questions we had completed. No, all the answers we have already discussed. And now I explain briefly right to equality. That is on page number 176 and 177. It is very clearly mentioned. Right to equality. What do you understand by right to equality? Right to equality. What do you understand by that? Right to equality. You can just give some of the important points you just mentioned. The state cannot discriminate against anyone on the basis of gender, religion, caste, race, or place or birth. Place of birth. See, the state cannot. The state cannot discriminate against anyone on the basis of his gender, religion, his caste, race, or place of birth. See, there is no. The state, no, they cannot see. State can't say, or India can't say, the country can't say that you are belonging to this and this place and you are using this and this language, so you are not having this and this abilities, or you are not having this and that things. We can't say so. That is against. Okay, and there is no discrimination on grounds of religion, sex, or caste with regard to access to shops, restaurants, public places, or in the use of wells. So we are not the see. If we are belonging to the minority class, also you are having the access to everywhere, even in the public places, shopping malls, wherever. So we have all the citizens of India should be treated equally. We have got that right to equality in the sense that accessibility to the public places or even the government offices, equal chances. So that is called the right to equality. That should be maintained. Okay, all should get this right to equality. That should be enjoyed by everyone. Okay, there is no discrimination on the basis of religion, even the caste or creed or sex, or even so public places like access to shops, restaurants, all these places should be given. Now, and the other point we can see, all citizens have equal opportunities with regard to employment in government offices or admission to government institutions on the basis of merit and qualifications. All citizens, so you just understand that all the citizens have got the equal opportunities with regard to the employment in government offices. So all citizens have got these equal opportunities. They should have the equal opportunities with regard to the employment that is in government offices or admission to government institutions on the basis of merit and qualifications. So you see that equal opportunities should be there on the basis of their merit. Okay. Now the practice of untouchability is a punishable offense. You see, the practice of untouchability is a punishable offense, as the untouchability is an offense against a human dignity. You see, the practice of untouchability is a punishable offense. Actually, it is a punishable offense, and as a untouchability is an offense. Untouchability is an offense against the human dignity. Gandhiji fought against the untouchability throughout his political career. All these things you mentioned, and then Rai Bahadur and Maharaja, Nawab, all these titles should be avoided. So these are actually used by the British people. So these things should be this should be avoided, and these are actually against the principle of social equality, and therefore these titles should be removed, and these titles were abolished. Okay, so that is what the right to equality all about. Now let us move to see something about the right to freedom. Right to freedom also there on page number 177. Right to freedom, you just mentioned some of the important points only. I'm just telling, you can just underline. The right to freedom ensures civil liberty and protects the individual from the repressive acts of the government. See, the right to freedom actually ensures the civil liberty, and it is also protecting the individuals from the repressive acts of the government. Now, all citizens of India are guaranteed 6 types of freedom. So, which are the 6 types of freedom? All citizens of India. So, that is what we are just going to. And you just mentioned freedom to every citizen has the right to freedom of speech. Freedom of first one is freedom of speech and expression. You just mentioned that every citizen of India has got the right to freedom of speech and expression. So you see, freedom to assemble peacefully without arms. First point you can just mention, that is that much only you just mentioned there. Freedom to assemble peacefully without arms. Mention that. Next point, freedom to form associations and unions. Freedom to form associations and unions. And then right to free movement. That you write. Okay, just explanation you write. Right to free movement. So there you write, every citizen of India is entitled to move freely and settle through the territory of India for work or business. Right to free movement. Okay, so that you write, freedom to reside or settle. Freedom to reside or settle in any part of India. An Indian citizen can reside in any part of the country, buy, sell, or transfer his property even. So you can write, freedom to reside or settle in any part of India. You can write, an Indian citizen can reside in any part of the country, buy, sell, or transfer his property. Now, last point you can write, freedom to practice any profession and carry on any occupation, trade or business. Freedom to practice any profession and carry on any occupation, trade or business. This must you write. Okay. Next one is what is the next question? Right to constitutional remedies. Right to constitutional remedies will be there on page number 179. So that is given now. Right to constitutional remedies. See, our constitution provides us with an impressive list of fundamental rights, but these rights are meaningless. Okay, so that you underline. Okay, full first paragraph about that you can just write fully. Okay, almost fully you can write. See, that means when you say the right to constitutional remedies, you can just mention. So these rights are meaningless unless there is some laws or some authority to protect those rights. Safeguard. There should be somebody or something to safeguard those laws, rights. So now, in order to safeguard those, what you can say, rights, there should be some laws. There should be some authority. So that's what the court is doing. So if there is a violation of the rights are there, means the people can directly approach, especially the minorities and so on, can directly approach the court, and then and there, the direct direct approach of the court will be there. So they are supposed to, the court has got the right to solve or to safeguard those laws, the rights of the minorities especially. So that you can just read that. Our constitution provides us with an impressive list of fundamental rights, but these rights are meaningless unless there is a court to prevent the violation of these rights by the states. Okay, see, unless there is a court to prevent the violation of these rights by the states, groups, or a person, the constitution guarantees people the right to move the court for the protection of their fundamental rights. The constitution guarantees people, actually the constitution guarantees the people the right to move the court for the protection of their fundamental rights. Okay, the constitution that is providing Okay, let us move to the photo study questions. Look at the picture and answer the following questions. Which fundamental right is being violated in this picture? That is very clear. Which is violated? Which fundamental right is being violated in this picture? That is none other than right against exploitation. So that is what provision to be have for the protection of children? They can be protected under the act, that is right against exploitation. So we have seen that is right against exploitation. We just see, no, right against exploitation. What is that? Citizen of India cannot be forced to work against their will or without payment, and even children under the age of 14 cannot be forced to work. So that is a very good rule and law made. They can be protected. They can be protected under their right against exploitation of any kind. You see, children under the age of 14 cannot be forced to work, and they can be protected under their right against exploitation of any kind. Examples of many such children abound in our country. Okay, so that is what. So ideally, what should these children be doing? They should they should get the education. They have got all the right to get education. So they should get that right. So they should get the right to education. So children under the age of 14, they should be given the education. So that should be provided. So that is actually this chapter is all about, and one chapter that is actually the optional one, history, that is Vijayanagara and okay, Brahminic kingdoms. That is actually the optional one only. Vijayanagara and Brahminic kingdoms, that is option 7. The chapter, that is optional one. So the other ones we have already taken. So please just go through this. No, the photo study questions and true or false. See, all the same. And one more thing you need to understand here. It is not exactly some certain words, okay, certain word meanings, and certain answers will be taken from the text itself, not only from the exercise. So please just go through this chapter very nicely, so that you can just remember. Okay, so the word meaning sometime, and the years, you just see the years which is given, no, the timeline. So you need to just learn this timeline also. Please do that. Timeline also you need to study. It's very important. Timeline. So let us, okay, the Khalji dynasty. Also we have seen about this, the establishment of Khalji dynasty and Alauddin. So let us take that chapter, the Khalji dynasty, if you want to revise. So let us take that, the Khalji dynasty. You see that. So Khalji dynasty, Alauddin ascended the throne when it was 1219. So Alauddin captures the throne in 1296. Okay, Alauddin captures the throne in 1296, and Alauddin dies in 1316. Then that tracks the end of the Khalji dynasty, that is in 1320. So you see, centuries it is given. Okay, you see, 1215, okay, to 1315 century, that dynasty, this is the end of Khalji dynasty is taking place in 1320. So you know, Alauddin Khalji's picture is given. So you see that the beginning it is written here, Balban successfully crushed all the rebellions and established a strong government. So Balban was able to crush all the rebellions, and he was able to establish a strong government. And his successors, however, were quite incapable of maintaining the empire. His Hope set the stage for the rise of the second Delhi Sultanate dynasty, that is the Khalji dynasty. See, Balban, see, okay, Alauddin Khalji dynasty. So who has founded this? Jalaluddin Khalji. And what was the original name of, full name of Jalaluddin Khalji? Jalaluddin Firoz. Jalaluddin Firoz, the founder of Khalji dynasty, is the full name of Jalaluddin Khalji. Please note down that also. Jalaluddin Firoz. Okay, it was the full name of Jalaluddin Khalji. Okay, so he was an old man, 70, when he ascended to the throne. Okay, so that was the situation. And the military Alauddin, about the Alauddin Khalji, we have seen Alauddin uncle had appointed him the governor of Awadh and Khara. And in the 1296 century, he attacked and defeated Ramendra of Devagiri, and that is starting point of Alauddin Khalji. So there he starts his, what we can say, his administration and his war affairs, and so he is starting there only. And he returned with fabulous riches. From there, it was a chance, it was a chance for him, and he learned from that. So that was an influencing factor that led to that led him for more conquest achievements. So he was very happy with that. Okay, Jalaluddin was so pleased with his nephew's achievement that he went to Allahabad to welcome him. On the way, that his accident is taking place, and Jalaluddin was killed by that. Okay, what was the accident? You see that next he defeated and imprisoned. He was on the way he was murdered, and that at the behest of Alauddin. So he was murdered on the way. Who? Jalaluddin Firoz Khalji. So that is what the chapter is, and let us see then detail also here. So one by one also you can just see in detail manner. Okay. So military expansion also we have seen that, and then what was the administration? How was the administration of? Alauddin was not only successful general, but he was a good administrator, and he was we can say that an accomplished administrator, it is written. So let us see some of the answers here. Okay, the answers of chapter. So we have seen the last successor of Balban was Gaikwad, last successor of Kalban. And in 1296 century, Alauddin defeated Raja Ramchandra Devagiri of Deccan. So actually in Deccan, no? And returned with fabulous riches. In south, Alauddin made the Rajas his vassals and took annual tribute from them. And Alauddin built the Alai Darwaza. Which served as a beautiful entrance to the Qutub Minar. Alauddin only built the Alai Darwaza, which served as a beautiful entrance to the Qutub Minar. And Alauddin was succeeded by his son Qutbuddin Mubarak. See, he was successful, and he was succeeded by his son Qutbuddin Mubarak. As the following you can see. Okay, founder of the Khalji dynasty. Who was the founder of Khalji dynasty? All these things we had seen. Then right, true or false, and then these things we had seen. Okay, and right, true or false, and soon Alauddin Khalji took steps to control prices. True. To southern states which Alauddin conquered were under his direct rule. That is all false. And Amir Hassan was a scholar in the court of Alauddin Khalji. That is also true. Jalaluddin Khalji introduced the system of Chehra. True. Alauddin increased the land revenue from the 1/3 to half. That is also true. Okay. And also you have to see this. You see some of the important works of Amir Khusrau, and he is known as the father of Qawwali. And you see that what of some of his important works. So you just we have the names. Okay, so just go through those names. Okay, just study those names. That's also you need to. And so now what is left is answer the following questions. What steps were taken by Alauddin to establish a large empire? What are the steps he has taken to make a very large empire? So he had this Alauddin's empire extended from the Brahmaputra in the east to the Arabian Sea in the west, and from the Himalayas in the north up to the Madurai in the far south. And he realized that the south was far off and difficult to rule. Hence, he made the rajas and vassals and took annual tributes from them. And this way, he was able to maintain a large army and develop efficient administration. That is what his large empire, no, large empire, vast empire. So he was able to. He was having a very large army, and he was able to develop an efficient administration. He was able to maintain, no, develop an efficient administration there. That's also you need to keep in mind. Then what methods were adopted by Alauddin to improve the finances of his empire? This is the second question. What are the steps? The steps were adopted by Alauddin was not only, so you see that what all things are there? What methods were adopted by Alauddin to improve the finances of his empire? Finance of his empire is the rulers of the Deccan were forced to acknowledge the supremacy of the Sultan and to pay heavy annual tribute as a mark of submission to their overlord. And special revenue officials were appointed to collect taxes in cash and allow them to increase the share of the state from 1/3 to half. All these things are some of the methods, no, adopted by improve the finances of his empire. These are only economic reforms. There you see the rulers of the Deccan were forced to acknowledge the supremacy of the Sultan, and they had to pay heavy annual tribute as a mark of submission to their overlord. So these were some of the answers you need to keep in your mind also. Okay. So I hope that you might have understood this part.